Hi everyone, welcome back here to the channel. Today I'd like to talk to you about how long it takes to wind up a deceased estate. Now guys, let me just say firstly, there's no one size fits all when it comes to winding up a deceased estate. There are various factors that can play a role in the process and how long it takes. And the point of today's video is to look at some of those factors that will influence how long it takes to wind up the estate. End of the video, I'll give you my realistic estimate of how long it should take to wind up a deceased estate, especially now post-COVID. Now, guys, let's look at the first factor. Firstly, the process, right? The process itself will impact the timing of winding up the deceased estate. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Guys, the process has various steps that have to be completed, right, from start to finish. And many of these steps, they are connected to each other in the sense that you can't take step B before step A has not been completed, and so on and so on. And the other thing to keep in mind is that some of these steps have prescribed time periods that have to expire before you can take the next step. I'll give you an example. When an executor receives the letters of executorship, one of the first things the executor should do is to advertise the estate for debtors and creditors, right? Now, from date of that advertisement, the executor has to allow 30 days for creditors to file their claims against the estate. Now, there's nothing the executor can do to expedite the 30 days somehow. The 30 days has to run its course, right? Similarly, when the executor has the L&D account ready, right? The L&D account has to lie open for inspection for a period of 21 days. That's 3 weeks before the executor can distribute the estate. Now, again, the executor cannot somehow expedite the 21 days or make it magically disappear. He has to wait for the 21 days to expire after that Section 35 notice has been published. So that's what we mean when we say the process itself has an impact on how long it takes to wind up a deceased estate. Secondly, guys, the complexity of the estate. Now, each estate is obviously different, right? So that's what we also meant in the beginning when we said there's no one size fits all. Now, there can be many things that influences, or there can be many things that impacts the complexity of an estate. But I'll give you a simple example. Let's say you have one estate where the deceased died, leaving only cash assets, right? Let's say R1 million in an ABSA investment account of some sorts, right? And let's take another estate where the deceased had cash assets, motor vehicles, and also immovable property. Let's say he had 4 houses, right? Now, you will agree with me, it will be easier and take much quicker for an executor to wind up this estate where there's only cash assets versus the other one where there's cash, motor vehicles, and immovable property to deal with. So that's what we mean when we say that the complexity of the estate will influence how long the process takes. Thirdly, guys, is the different role players, right? When it comes to deceased estates administration, there'll be different people from time to time that the executor needs to engage with, and the executor will need the cooperation of these people as part of winding up the deceased estate successfully. Now, these role players, for example, include the master's office, the banks, and SARS. Those are the obvious examples, right? So keep in mind that obviously the master's office will have their own turnaround time and their own issues sometimes with staff and that sort of thing. And also the banks, right? I remember during COVID times, some of the banks, they had like standard turnaround times of 30 days, right? So you got to be mindful of that, right? These role players will have their own turnaround times, and you as the executor, you are reliant on their, or you depend on their cooperation also to complete the process. So guys, that brings me then to the fourth factor that can influence how long it takes to wind up a deceased estate. And this one is the most important one in my view. It is the executor itself, the executor or the executor's agent, if the executor appoints an agent to run the process. Now, what do we mean here? Guys, if you are dealing with an executor that is a slapgat, right, or slacker, then that person is not gonna know how best to navigate through the process, how best to deal with these different role players when it comes to getting their cooperation as quickly as possible. So you can expect that if you're dealing with an executive that's a slacker or slapgat, it's going to take much longer to wind up the estate than, for example, if your executor is someone who has a sense of urgency, who wants to get things done, and who you can rely on to be honored, you know? So that's what we mean when we say the executor or the executor's agent will also play a role in how long it takes to wind up a deceased estate. So guys, now that we're at the end of the video, let me give you my realistic estimate. I think all things being equal, and it's certainly been my experience in the last 2 to 3 years post-COVID, is that a realistic time period for winding up a deceased estate is 12 to 18 months. So guys, that then brings me to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found some value in it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you back here next time. And until then, take care. Cheers for now.